Thank you for staying with us. The juvenile justice system aims to rehabilitate and reintegrate young offenders into society rather than simply punishing them. These individuals face numerous challenges, including limited access to education, trauma, stigma, and lack of support. The juvenile justice approach recognizes that adolescents are still developing physically, emotionally, and psychologically, and that they have the capacity for growth and change. Education has also proven to play a vital role in this process, empowering impacted victims to overcome their past and build a brighter future. Joining us in the studio for this conversation is Executive Director, Center for Legal Support and Inmate Rehabilitation, Joke Aladesomi. Good morning.
Good morning.
It's good to have you join us, and you're looking beautiful.
Really? Thank you. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Let's talk about this matter of juvenile justice, how well we are doing as a country.
Thank you very much. And I think I love the extension of how well we're doing as a country. If we're looking at it from that perspective, I would say there's still a lot to be done, a whole lot to be done. There's been, though we've made some significant progress, especially for Lagos states, I really need to say that. But in comparison with what is happening in other states, as regards making appropriate provision for children, you know, the law, it's actually very direct as to protecting the interest of a child. And one thing we need to understand is that when it comes to children in conflict with the law, they're not different from any other child. They are just in conflict with the law. So there is the general provision of the law, there is constitution provision, and even international statute that already provides for the interest, how the interests of children should be protected. And even when they're in conflict with the law, the attention, the steps that needs to be taken in terms of how their trials are being taken, how their remands, you know, the correctional facility accepts them, and all of that. So while I would say that we've made some very good progress, we are still very far behind. Like as we speak right now, as big as the country is, I think we only have like 11 bus-style institutions, remand homes and bus-style institutions.
Just 11?
Yes, just 11. And Lagos State is doing significantly to some good extent, but for other states, there's still a lot that needs to be done. And there are still gaps.
Right.
There are still gaps that seriously needs to be filled.
Now, talk to us about perhaps what Lagos State is doing differently that makes them stand out from what you have said, and then the gaps.
Right. So I would say, with from my experience and from what I've seen, we had the privilege to work closely with the Ministry of Youth and Social Development, which is like the ministry that caters for the well-being of children generally, inclusive of children who are in conflict with the law. And I would say that their mode of operation, it's to be commendable. There's still gap for improvement. There's still space for improvement. But I believe so much in even talking about how far they've come while we try to call for action for what they can do better.
Absolutely.
So in terms of interactions with them, we visited the center, the juvenile centers, the homes, their interactions with the children. But like I said, there are still gaps that needs to be filled. But compared to other states, it's a whole lot of, it's more like let the children just be there. Let them just keep them there, you know, without any, because the truth remains that when you do not give children who are in conflict with the law the opportunity for them to want to be better, we are just preparing for the overpopulation of the adult prison. Because even when you let them go, even when they eventually come out of the matter or the case that must have taken them into the correctional center, that's the special correctional center for boys, or the remand home or the bus-style institution, when they come out of there and they are not properly rehabilitated, they are not given something else to want to look forward to, they are not given the hope to want to even explore you know, their uniqueness as children, they would eventually find themselves up there. So there is need for that attention to the need of children who are in conflict with the law. There is need for rehabilitation. And when I say rehabilitation, I mean constructive rehabilitation. I mean strategic rehabilitation. So when we're talking about education, for instance, the law provides, Section 13 of the Child Rights Law of Lagos State provides that every child has access to education, from primary education to junior secondary school. A lot of the institutions do not make provision for that gap. Did not make provision. So what that means, we're trying to analyze this conversation in my office in one of the days. And we're like, what it simply means is that when a child comes in conflict with the law, even as little as age 11, because the law says that you can only be criminally responsible. When you're below 7, you're not criminally responsible. When you're below 12, you're criminally responsible if there is proof that you have a knowledge of what you have done, and then above 12, then you're criminally responsible. And so for a child, let's take, for instance, a child that is 11 years old. When a child is 11 years old and commits a crime, you have if you do not give the child access to good education, you have automatically deprived that child of even becoming something much more better in the future.
Which is a right.
Yes, because for instance, it means the child cannot even contest for any election in the country because of a mistake a mistake he made when he was 11. So we need to pay attention to all these things. It's not just about, oh, we're giving them education, and then we're not extending it to allow them to want to thrive, in that sphere. There is need for a much more strategic one, a much more constructive way of empowering juveniles that have been impacted by the justice system.
And in terms of, being strategic about this, talk to us about the figures that we're up against in terms of, rehabilitation and all that, taking into considerations some of the socioeconomic issues that we still have today.
Okay, in terms of, I'll tell you, I want to believe it's a fact that Nigeria as a whole, we are still far behind when it comes to statistics. Okay. There's a lot, we are still very far behind. So I might not be able to pinpoint a particular statistics, unlike what you have in adult prison where the statistics are out there. You already know that if you check the Nigerian Correctional Service website today, figures. You have the figures right there, right? For the juveniles, you might not get all of that statistics all in one place, right? But with the way the increase in crime lately, you go on social media and then you read the news of a 15-year-old boy killing the friend. You read the news of a 12-year-old maid beating the child or doing one thing to a child. They're all children in conflict with the law. So you can imagine the rise in crime if we do not make adequate provision and adequate preparation to empower them, to rehabilitate them strategically, constructively, not in the name of rehabilitation, just to meet up with the world, but to be deliberate about it. What would happen is normal. What would happen is they would eventually find themselves going around that system. And on the long run, it's no longer about them hurting the society, even though it appears to be so, but even the society has not actually been fair to them, has not given them the opportunity. So if you're saying that, oh, this child has been so terrible since 11 years old, has been going to the prison since 12 years old, the question we should also be asking is, when this child comes in conflict with the law, what adequate provision, what measures were put in place, what support did he receive to ensure that he doesn't find himself on this route anymore?
Now, I'm interested in what the needs of a child in conflict with the law or children in conflict with the law really is, because you've been mentioning matters of being strategic at addressing them and being holistic as well. Yes. So if we are looking at a holistic approach to addressing these needs, we should know them as an institution, as a people, and even to the family unit. Yes. So let's address it holistically.
Yes. So first off, I'm going to, just like I already mentioned, first of all, I'm going to say, when it comes to education, that's like you're giving a child a very wild opportunity. That's one thing that needs to, attention needs to be, there needs to be much more focus there. And then, we also need to understand that most of these children, largely, let me say more than 80% of them are actually from disadvantaged homes. Yeah.
When we say disadvantaged home, how do you?
Yeah, I mean, families that are economically and socially disadvantaged.
Yeah, that's what we say. Almost all families are economically.
What I mean is families who are far below, the status of society. I'm trying not to use the word poor. Right? But that's what it is. These are children who, a lot of times, they do not have that parental, maybe the parental presence, maybe the parental provision, maybe a child is growing. There's a lot that goes into the growth of a child. Right. In terms of the support. Nurturing the child. A lot of times, there's that gap. So there are children that have more or less been left to the society. Now, when that child comes in conflict with the law, and has the Constitution particularly says that when a child comes in conflict with the law, the child should be kept in the accommodation provided by the governor, right? And that's where you have the Special Correctional Center for boys, the Special Correctional Center for girls, and all of that. So when they come in conflict with the law, the society now, in terms of the government, now has the responsibility of trying as much as possible to fill in that gap. So that when they eventually come out to the society, they have a lot much more, because they are going to grow. Within that system, they are still growing.
Absolutely.
The fact that they are in conflict with the law does not mean they stop growing when they enter the facility. So what that simply means is that if they are 13, they might be there till they are 16. So what role is being played there? So education, psychosocial support, mental health support, right? Like, how many of the Boston institutions across the country have even mental health experts, psychologists, to help them through the journey of the justice system that they found themselves? Because what simply means is that when all of these needs are being ignored, you're leaving them in a very hopeless state. You're making it look like this one is, you're more like an outcast, even as a child, even for a mistake of a child, right? And there is no way a child that goes to that system, if he's ever going to break himself or herself out of that system, has a whole lot of work with a whole lot of trauma to deal with. A whole lot of trauma to deal with. So we're talking about psychosocial support, we're talking about mental health support, we're talking about education, constructive, extensive, right? At least, even if we're not going up to the point of tertiary, let's even give the basic according to the law, which is the junior secondary school. Let's even do that. Then we can probably now, let's even, stop there. And then we can probably now start advocating for the extension. But of course, a child who has the junior secondary school certificate still has a hope of building a lot of things on it. There was an analysis I was given some days ago that when a child has a junior secondary school certificate, you can wake up one day and say, okay, let me register in one of the centers in town and take WAEC, right? But junior secondary school, you can't just write it. You can't just walk and say, I want to go and enroll and go and write junior. No, you can't. So it's much more intensive, compared to senior secondary school. Senior secondary school, there's some level of independence. You can write GCE. If you don't want to go to a particular school, you can write GCE, right? That's general certificate examination. But you cannot, when you miss that junior secondary school qualification, it's like you have automatically snatched education totally away from the child, right? And so looking at education, mental health support, psychosocial support, vocational training. But let's not also make the mistake of saying that, all they need, we've met people that say, no, all they need is just vocational training. It's just for them to teach them how to make, but the truth remains that the speed at which the world is going, you can't just hold on to vocational training alone. You can have the skills, you can have all of those experiences, but education polishes it for you and opens more room for you to want to thrive, for you to want to, contribute in a much more intelligent way to the society and even the country, right? So all of these gaps, all of these needs, when it's being met, majorly because it is actually to the interest of the child. The law says whatever decision that has to do with the child has to be centered on their interest. So whatever arrangement you're having, if it's not to the interest of the child, you're already depriving them of their right.
Right.
All right, so talk to us about what your organization is doing in terms of, rehabilitation and what it's like for these children afterwards, and also the parents of those children, especially those who are still, there for them at that time, how they're able to, go through the process and ensure that the child, still achieves what they can.
Right. So I'm going to start from the parent, and then I'll go down to what our organization is doing. Okay. Like I said, from my interaction with the Ministry of Youth, I know they try so much to ensure that parents play their roles. When it comes to children in conflict with the law, of course, they are not going to, unlike the adult prison, that when the child is eventually released, they just open the gate for you and off you go. Okay. For the center, it's not like that. They still expect that the guardian will be there to take the child. But it shouldn't stop there. It shouldn't stop there. There's need for, because the truth is, a child that has gone through that system, to some extent, is broken. So there's need for that constant supervision and to be sure that the parents are taking responsibility for what they need to do. The parents are taking significant steps for what they need to do, right? And so by the time that intervention is there, you are sure that as they are journeying into freedom, they can start making much more positive decisions. Now for our organization, one thing we are so big on is actually providing rehabilitation and re-entry support for incarcerated persons and formerly incarcerated persons. And we've gone extensively, I mean, in terms of providing education in adult prisons, preparing them for exams, providing mental health. Last year, we launched the first halfway house for formerly incarcerated women. So we have women that when they're coming out from the prison, they have to stay there. And for the juvenile home, I think we started by taking our mobile library. So we have a mobile library that goes around all of the correctional centers to provide books to incarcerated people who want to read or expand their minds. And so we started off from there, taking our books there, getting them to read. And we discovered that these kids are quite brilliant, you know. And then we now had to take a step further, approach the Ministry of Youth and Social Development that, okay, this is what we want to do. And gladly, they were so excited to partner with us to, you know, extend our educational program to the centers, to the juvenile centers. In the coming years, we are looking at the opportunity of even extending it beyond Lagos State. But you know, Lagos State is standard. When it happens, when it works,
and this should spread around.
Yes, it should, it has to, because now it's easier for Lagos, right? But let's talk about even places that are so far, like Kano. Who is even talking about there? What about?
Or even had to reach locations.
Locations, right.
But quickly, I want to ask this question because it just came to mind, and I'm asking, or the question is it in the best interest of the child? Because we are talking about the interest of the child now, to return a child back to a home that we call disadvantaged, or to return a child to an environment that is not helping the child become a wholesome individual.
Oh, it's definitely not to the interest of the child. And I also think that might be one gap we might need to start looking at.
Right.
Because if you have, if a child has parents who are totally irresponsible, like they are just nothing they are of no use or of really no benefit, contributing better to the life of the children. Of course, the child in that instance should not be released to such parents. But let's even talk about how many homes. I know for Lagos State, they have for the Idiaraba girls, I know they have where those who are in that situation can stay back, and then they have a little bit of freedom where they go out, they walk, they come back home. I know there's also the one at Birel, the one at Yaba, which is almost the same arrangement. But now let's look at it much more broadly in terms of the country. How many homes do we even have for children who are going through the justice system? When they come out, are there safe houses? Houses?
So we need to have more safe houses, because if they have to find themselves in a place or a situation, and we say we have rehabilitated them, and we take them to an environment where they are not seeing anything better, then the cycle continues.
Definitely.
But, we have much work to do. We have to leave the conversation here now. Unfortunately, our time is up. Joke Aladesomi, Executive Director, Center for Legal Support and Inmate Rehabilitation. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Welcome.